At 06:45 a.m. on November 2nd, 1943, Major Raymond Wilkins led 8 B-25s toward Rabaul as radar detected his formation. He was 26 years old on his 87th mission, the last survivor from the original 3rd Bombardment Group. Waiting below were 367 anti-aircraft guns and nearly 400 Japanese fighters protecting the most heavily defended base in the Pacific. The briefing 3 hours earlier had been quiet. Gray-faced crews listened as intelligence officers described the target. Simpson Harbor held Japanese cruisers and destroyers supporting enemy operations at Bougainville. Marines had landed on Bougainville 2 days earlier. Those ships needed to stay in harbor or the invasion would fail. 5th Air Force needed them destroyed. The briefing officer made a simple prediction. Not all of them would be coming home. Wilkins knew the numbers better than most. By day's end, 45 airmen would be dead or missing. He'd watched everyone from his original group go down over the past 20 months. Some burned over New Guinea, others ditched in the Coral Sea. A few simply vanished on long-range missions. February 1942, he'd arrived with dozens of crews. Now he was the last one still flying combat. He led 8 B-25 Mitchells, modified with forward-firing machine guns, toward the toughest target in theater. The plan was brutal in its simplicity. Approach at masthead level, 50 to 100 feet above the water. Skip bombs across the harbor surface into ship hulls. Strafe decks with 8 50 caliber machine guns while dropping ordnance. Get out before the entire Japanese Air Force arrived. Intelligence reported nearly 200 base fighters spread across 5 airfields. Worse, 173 carrier aircraft had arrived from the combined fleet on November 1st. Air groups from Zuikaku, Shokaku, and Zuiho now operated from Rabaul. Wilkins checked his instruments as the formation crossed the Solomon Sea. Fuel looked good. Engines ran smooth. His B-25, nicknamed Fifi, carried modifications installed at Eagle Farm Airfield in Brisbane. 4 A&M-2 50 caliber machine guns mounted in the nose. 4 more in external pods on each side of the fuselage. Enough firepower to put 800 rounds per second into a target. The technique had been developed over months of trial and error in the Southwest Pacific. Most of the men who perfected it were dead. The modification work had started in early 1943. Standard B-25s couldn't survive low-level ship attacks. They needed forward firepower to suppress deck guns during the bombing run. Mechanics removed bombardier positions and installed fixed machine guns. The theory was simple. Clear the decks with gunfire, skip the bomb into the hull below the waterline, exit at full throttle before enemy fighters arrived. Theory and practice were different things. Early attempts resulted in aircraft shot down before reaching targets. Crews learned to time their approaches, come in low enough that ship radar couldn't track them, fast enough that gun crews had seconds to react. The survivors developed techniques. The rest died testing them. Japanese radar had given Rabaul 30 minutes warning. Fighters would be climbing now from Lakunai, Vunakanau, Rapopo, Tobera, and Borpop airfields. Anti-aircraft crews manning 367 gun positions around the harbor perimeter. Wilkins maintained altitude and heading. His wingmen held tight formation behind him. They called Rabaul the Pearl Harbor of the South Pacific. Volcanic peaks surrounded a natural harbor that could hold hundreds of ships. The Japanese had fortified it into their main Southwest Pacific stronghold. Concrete bunkers housed command centers. Radar stations provided early warning. More anti-aircraft guns defended this single base than Darwin and Port Moresby combined. 5th Air Force Intelligence rated it the toughest fight they'd encountered in the entire war. Wilkins had survived 86 missions by following procedures. Check fuel every 10 minutes. Watch engine temperatures. Maintain radio discipline. Trust your wingmen. The same rules that kept him alive since February 1942, but statistics worked against everyone eventually. Survival wasn't about skill after a certain point, just mathematics and luck running out. How would Wilkins handle what no bomber crew had survived before? Please hit that like button. It helps others discover these stories. And subscribe. Back to Wilkins over Rabaul. The coastline appeared ahead. Dark green jungle meeting impossibly blue water. Wilkins descended to 100 feet. Salt spray began hitting his windscreen. The formation tightened up. 7 B-25s behind him carrying crews who trusted his judgment. The harbor entrance opened before them. Ships filled the anchorage. Cruisers, destroyers, transport vessels clustered near the docks. More targets than Wilkins had seen in months. Then the first gun fired. A heavy anti-aircraft battery on the northern ridgeline. The shell burst 200 yards ahead, black smoke marking the explosion. More guns opened up. Wilkins pushed the throttles forward and dropped to 70 feet. 367 guns were concentrating fire on 8 aircraft flying straight toward them at masthead height. Wilkins held course. His thumb moved to the gun trigger. The first ship was 600 yards ahead. In 90 seconds, everything would change. At 500 yards, Wilkins opened fire. 8 50 caliber machine guns sent tracers streaking toward a Japanese destroyer. The guns hammered. Brass casings ejected into the cockpit. His co-pilot worked the bomb release controls. 400 yards. The destroyer's deck erupted as bullets tore through steel plating and crew positions. 300 yards. Japanese gunners fired back. 20mm rounds from the destroyer's anti-aircraft mounts, heavier shells from shore batteries. The air between Wilkins and his target filled with tracer fire and exploding ordnance. His B-25 shuddered as rounds punched through the wings and fuselage. He held the trigger down. 200 yards. The bombs released. 2 500-pound general-purpose bombs skipped across the water surface like stones. Wilkins pulled up hard. The first bomb struck the destroyer below the waterline near the engine room. The second hit amidships. Both detonated. The destroyer's hull split open. Secondary explosions followed as magazines cooked off. Wilkins was already past, climbing to 200 feet, banking hard left. Something was wrong with the controls. The B-25 responded sluggishly. Wilkins glanced back. His vertical stabilizer had been shot away. Shrapnel had torn through the tail section. Hydraulic fluid streamed from damaged lines. The aircraft wanted to roll right. He fought the stick to maintain level flight. Behind him, the other 7 B-25s pressed their attacks. 2 more destroyers took hits. 1 transport vessel burst into flames. But Japanese fighters were arriving now. Zeros from the carrier air groups. Fast, maneuverable, deadly at low altitude. Wilkins saw 1 B-25 explode as a Zero's cannon fire found its fuel tanks. No parachutes. The burning wreckage hit the water at 200 miles per hour. Anti-aircraft fire intensified. The Japanese had plotted the American withdrawal route. Gun crews tracked the fleeing B-25s. Shells burst in precise patterns. Another Mitchell took hits and rolled inverted. It struck the harbor surface and disintegrated. Wilkins counted his remaining aircraft. 6 left, including his own. His engines were still running. That was something. Oil pressure looked acceptable on number 1. Number 2 showed slight overheating, but nothing critical. The hydraulics were gone. Landing gear would have to come down manually if he made it back. If. The fuel tanks hadn't been hit. Another small miracle. A second ship appeared ahead. Heavy cruiser. Bigger target, heavier guns. The cruiser's anti-aircraft batteries were already firing. Wilkins had 2 options. Break off and head for the exit, or make another run. His squadron was scattered now, each aircraft fighting its own battle. The cruiser was turning to bring more guns to bear on the retreating bombers. Standard procedure said withdraw. He'd accomplished the mission, destroyed 1 ship, aircraft damaged but flyable, get out while he could. Wilkins had survived 87 missions by following procedures. This would be number 88 if he left now. But the cruiser was tracking his wingmen. Its main batteries could reach them. If someone didn't suppress those guns, more B-25s would go down. Wilkins looked at his co-pilot. Young kid. 3rd mission. Eyes wide. Waiting for orders. Wilkins made his choice. He pushed the throttles forward and turned toward the cruiser. The co-pilot understood immediately. They had no bombs left. This would be a strafing run. Pure gunfire. The goal wasn't to sink the ship, just draw its fire away from the others. The cruiser was 800 yards ahead. Wilkins descended to 50 feet. The damaged tail made precise maneuvering nearly impossible. He compensated with throttle and rudder. The aircraft shook. Metal screamed. 600 yards. The cruiser's guns swung toward him. Every anti-aircraft mount on that ship opened fire simultaneously. 40mm, 25mm, 13mm machine guns. The volume of fire was unlike anything Wilkins had experienced. Tracers formed a solid wall. He flew into it. 500 yards. His windscreen shattered. Glass fragments filled the cockpit. Something hit his left arm. Hot pain. He kept firing. The cruiser's deck disappeared under the impact of 8 machine guns. 400 yards. The aircraft was coming apart. Holes appeared in the wings. The No. 2 engine coughed. 300 yards. Would Wilkins reach the cruiser before his shot-up B-25 fell apart? Or would the Japanese gunners finish what they'd started? Wilkins held the trigger down. 200 yards from the cruiser. The .850 calibers poured rounds into the ship's superstructure. Gun crews dove for cover. Others simply vanished as bullets tore through their positions. The cruiser's bridge took sustained fire. Windows shattered, metal peeled away. 100 yards. Wilkins released the trigger and pulled up hard. The damaged stabilizer made the aircraft nearly uncontrollable. He used engine power to force the nose up. The B-25 cleared the cruiser's mast by 20 feet. Smoke poured from the No. 2 engine now. Oil pressure dropping. The cylinder head temperature gauge pinned at maximum. He'd drawn the cruiser's fire. That was the goal. Behind him, he could see his remaining squadron clearing the harbor. 5 B-25s climbing away from Rabaul. They'd make it out. The cruiser had stopped tracking them. Every gun on that ship had focused on Wilkins during his run. The cost was immediate. No. 2 engine seized. The propeller windmilled uselessly. Wilkins feathered it and adjusted trim. Single-engine flight in a shot-up bomber. He turned toward the harbor exit. The Japanese fighters were waiting. 3 Zeros came in from above. High side pass. They had altitude and speed advantage. Wilkins couldn't maneuver. His top turret gunner opened fire. Tracers reached up toward the diving fighters. The Zeros split. 2 went left. 1 came straight down the center line. Cannon shells walked up the fuselage. The radio operator's position took hits. Wilkins heard screaming over the intercom. Then silence. The Zero flashed past. His gunner claimed hits, but the fighter kept flying. It pulled up for another pass. More Zeros were joining now. 4, 6, 8. The carrier air groups had found him. A single crippled bomber was easy prey. Wilkins couldn't outrun them, couldn't outmaneuver them. His working engine was already at maximum power. The damaged airframe created so much drag that airspeed bled off constantly. Another Zero made its run, this time from the port side. Wilkins' waist gunner fired. The Zero's wing roots sparked as bullets found metal, but the Japanese pilot pressed his attack. 20mm cannon rounds hit the B-25's left wing. Fuel sprayed from a ruptured tank. The self-sealing feature was supposed to stop leaks. It didn't. Raw aviation fuel streamed back over the wing surface. One tracer round would turn his aircraft into a fireball. Wilkins pushed the nose down. Descending gave him airspeed, but brought him closer to the anti-aircraft guns below. He had no good options. The harbor exit was still 2 miles ahead. Japanese fighters swarmed around him. His gunners were firing constantly. Ammunition wouldn't last much longer. The coastline passed below. Jungle and volcanic rock. Still over Japanese-controlled territory. The Zeros pressed their attacks. Systematic, professional. They knew he couldn't escape. One fighter damaged his rudder. Another shot away his left aileron. The B-25 was barely flying now. More metal than aircraft, held together by speed and determination. Wilkins checked his instruments. Fuel pressure fluctuating on No. 1 engine. Oil temperature climbing. The damaged wing was creating asymmetric lift. He compensated with rudder and throttle. Every control input was a fight. His wounded arm throbbed. Blood soaked his sleeve. The co-pilot tried to help, but the controls required both hands. They crossed the coastline. Open water ahead. That meant a chance. Slim, but better than burning over land. The Zeros made another pass. Coordinated attack from 3 directions. His top turret gunner stopped firing, either dead or out of ammunition. The waist gunner was still shooting, short bursts now, conserving what little remained. More hits. The No. 1 engine coughed, sputtered, caught again. wouldn't last long. The fuel leak was getting worse. Wilkins could smell aviation gas in the cockpit. The instrument panel showed multiple warning lights: hydraulics gone, electrical system failing, oil pressure dropping on the remaining engine. Two choices: try to reach friendly territory 50 miles away, or ditch now while he still had some control. The engine made the decision for him. It quit. Sudden silence except for wind noise and Japanese fighters. The B-25 began descending immediately. Wilkins trimmed for best glide speed, 90 knots. Maybe get 3 or 4 miles from this altitude. The Zeros were still attacking. Either they didn't realize he was finished or didn't care. Another burst of cannon fire hit the fuselage. He prepared for ditching, told the surviving crew over intercom, "Wheels up, flaps up." Hit the water parallel to the swells. The co-pilot acknowledged. The waist gunner didn't respond. Wilkins assumed the worst. The water was close now, dark blue turning to green near the surface, swells about 4 feet. He lined up parallel. The B-25 was gliding well for an aircraft missing half its tail and one wing shredded. Wilkins held it steady. 500 feet. 300. 100. Would Wilkins survive the water impact in a bomber that was already falling apart? Or would the Pacific claim the last man from the 3rd Bombardment Group? The B-25 hit the water at 90 knots. The nose dug in. Water exploded over the cockpit. The impact threw Wilkins forward against his harness. Metal shrieked. The fuselage buckled. The aircraft slewed sideways and began breaking apart. Water rushed into the cockpit through the shattered windscreen. Cold. Dark. Wilkins released his harness. Tried to move. His left arm wouldn't respond. The wound was worse than he'd thought. The co-pilot was struggling with his own straps. Blood ran down his face from a gash above his eye. The B-25 was sinking fast, nose down, water already covering the instrument panel. Wilkins pushed himself up and back, found the overhead escape hatch, grabbed the release. Nothing. Jammed. The impact had warped the frame. He pulled harder. His wounded arm screamed. The hatch wouldn't budge. The co-pilot was free now. He moved toward the hatch. Together, they pulled. Metal groaned. The hatch shifted slightly. Not enough. Water was up to their chests, rising fast. The bomber's tail section was already underwater. The nose pointed almost straight down. One more pull. Wilkins used his good arm and both legs for leverage. The co-pilot braced against the seat. The hatch gave way, flew open. Precious seconds lost. Water poured through the opening as fast as they could climb. Wilkins pushed the co-pilot up first. Kid deserved a chance. The co-pilot disappeared through the hatch. Wilkins grabbed the frame and pulled himself up. His left arm was useless. He used his right arm and legs. Halfway through, the bomber lurched, tilted further nose down. The sudden movement threw him back into the cockpit. Water was over his head now. He couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Found the hatch by feel, pulled himself up again. His lungs burned. The aircraft was going down fast, taking him with it. He kicked hard, reached, found open air. He broke surface, gasping. The co-pilot was 10 feet away, swimming. Behind them, the B-25's tail stuck up at a steep angle. Air trapped in the fuselage kept it afloat for a few more seconds. Then it slipped beneath the surface. Bubbles marked where it went down. The last aircraft from the original 3rd Bombardment Group was gone. Wilkins tried to swim. His left arm hung useless. Blood clouded the water around him. The wound was bleeding worse now. Salt water burned. He kicked to stay afloat. Looked for other survivors. Didn't see any. The radio operator and waist gunner had gone down with the aircraft. The Zeros circled overhead. Low. One made a pass. Wilkins waited for gunfire. It didn't come. The Japanese pilot flew past and waggled his wings. A salute. Then the fighters turned back toward Rabaul. The sky emptied. Wilkins floated. The co-pilot swam closer, asked if he was all right. Wilkins didn't answer. Couldn't. The blood loss was catching up. His vision blurred. The co-pilot grabbed him, tried to keep his head above water. 2 men, no life raft, no rescue in sight. 50 miles from friendly territory. They lasted 40 minutes, maybe less. The co-pilot held on as long as he could, but Wilkins' weight pulled them both under. The kid had to choose, let go or drown with him. He let go. Wilkins slipped beneath the surface for the final time. 26 years old, 87 combat missions, the last man from February 1942. His body was never recovered. The Pacific kept him. Later, intelligence officers would piece together his final actions from radio intercepts and eyewitness accounts. 2 ships sunk, the heavy cruiser's guns suppressed during the critical withdrawal phase. 5 B-25s saved by his sacrifice. The numbers would be documented in after-action reports. But Wilkins never knew the full result. He died believing he'd done his job, protected his squadron. That was enough. The Medal of Honor citation would come later. Posthumous. His family in California would receive it. The girl in Australia he'd planned to marry would learn he wasn't coming back. The co-pilot was picked up 3 days later by a U.S. Navy patrol boat. Dehydrated, sunburned, half dead. He told the story of Wilkins' final mission, how the major could have withdrawn after the first ship, how he turned back to draw fire from the cruiser, how he fought the aircraft all the way to ditching. The testimony went into official records. Back over Rabaul, the remaining American aircraft were fighting their way out. 5 B-25s, scattered, each running for home independently. Japanese fighters swarmed. The battle wasn't over. More men would die before this day ended. The question was, how many would make it back to base? But something had changed. The heavy cruiser Wilkins attacked had stopped firing. Its gun crews were recovering from the strafing run, reorganizing. Those precious minutes gave the other bombers time to clear the harbor defenses, time measured in seconds, lives measured in those seconds. 1 B-25 made it out with 3 engines shot away, flew home on one. Another took 72 hits, counted later. The pilot landed with no hydraulics, no brakes, ran off the end of the runway and nosed over. Crew walked away. A third bomber ditched 20 miles offshore. PT boat picked them up. Would any of Wilkins' squadron survive to report what happened over Simpson Harbor? Or would November 2nd claim them all? 5 B-25s from Wilkins' squadron reached Allied airspace by 10:30 a.m. 2 were trailing smoke. 1 had half its tail missing. Another flew on a single engine. The 5th aircraft looked intact from distance. Up close, it was riddled with holes. Over 300 anti-aircraft fragments and bullet strikes. The crew counted them after landing. The base at Dobodura, New Guinea, received them. Ground crews ran toward the aircraft as engines shut down. Medics pulled wounded men from turrets and waist positions. 3 dead, 7 wounded. The survivors were silent, shell-shocked. They'd watched Wilkins go down, watched other B-25s explode. Some had seen the co-pilot in the water. Nobody saw the major surface. Intelligence officers began debriefing immediately. Results mattered more than grief. The mission had a specific purpose: keep Japanese ships in Simpson Harbor, prevent them from attacking the Marine landing at Bougainville. The officers needed confirmation: how many ships destroyed, how much damage inflicted, whether the raid achieved its objective. The crews reported methodically. First ship sunk by Wilkins, destroyer, direct hit, confirmed. Second ship, heavy cruiser, damaged, fires visible, dead in the water. Third ship, another destroyer, broken in half, sinking. Fourth ship, transport vessel, burning at the docks, ammunition stores detonating. The debriefing officers took notes, cross-referenced testimonies, built the picture. Total losses were catastrophic. 8 B-25 shot down, 9 P-38 Lightning fighters that provided escort, 45 airmen dead or missing. The single bloodiest day for 5th Air Force since the campaign began. The percentages were brutal. 11% of the attacking force destroyed, 23% of bomber crews killed. But the mission succeeded. Japanese ships stayed in harbor. None sortied to attack Bougainville. The Marines secured their beachhead without naval interference. Strategic victory. Tactical massacre. The mathematics of war reduced to numbers on paper. Ships versus men. Territory versus lives. One crew had a different story. Dick Walker, Sergeant, 13th Bombardment Squadron, 3rd Bombardment Group. Same group as Wilkins, but different squadron. Walker's experience that day revealed something darker about command under fire. Walker's squadron approached Rabaul from a different angle. 8 B-25s in formation, same mission, same target, same defenses. They reached the harbor entrance. Anti-aircraft fire opened up. Fighters scrambled. The squadron commander was supposed to lead them in. He didn't. At the last moment, the commander broke formation, turned away, flew back toward New Guinea. Didn't attack, didn't explain, just left. 7 B-25s following him suddenly had no leader. Radio discipline prevented questions. They turned to follow their commander away from the target. Walker couldn't accept it. He broke formation. Alone. Single B-25 against Simpson Harbor, against 367 guns, against 400 fighters. No wingman, no support, just determination and rage at watching his commander run. He went in at masthead level, picked a target, merchant vessel, big, slow, locked onto it. The anti-aircraft fire was worse than briefing suggested. Shells burst in patterns. Tracers filled every cubic foot of air. Walker flew through it. His aircraft took hits immediately. Wing, fuselage, tail. He kept going. 500 yards, 400, 300, his guns hammering. The merchant ship's deck disintegrating under sustained fire. 200 yards. He released his bombs. Skip bombing. Perfect execution. Both bombs hit below the waterline. The ship buckled, started listing. Walker pulled up hard. Zeros came after him. 6, 8, maybe 10. Walker couldn't count. His gunners were firing, burning through ammunition. The B-25 was shot up, but flying. The fighters made passes. Walker threw the bomber into violent maneuvers, anything to spoil their aim. His aircraft was tougher than it looked, took punishment, and kept flying. He made it out. Solo. 1 B-25, 1 destroyed ship. 1 man who refused to run. He landed at Dobadura 90 minutes after Wilkins went down. His aircraft had 43 holes. His crew had minor wounds. Nothing serious. They climbed out angry, furious. Their squadron commander had abandoned the mission. The confrontation happened that afternoon. Walker and other crews faced their commander, demanded explanation, got none. The commander offered excuses: weather, enemy strength, tactical discretion. Nobody believed him. The operations officer backed the commander. Political cover. Both men were protecting careers. 5th Air Force Headquarters handled it quietly. The squadron commander and operations officer received orders. Return stateside, immediate. No explanation, no court-martial, just removal. Disappeared from theater. New leadership took over. The incident went into classified files. Decades would pass before the full story emerged. Meanwhile, over Rabaul, the battle continued. The main raid involved 72 B-25s total. Not just Wilkins' 8, not just Walker's squadron. Multiple groups hitting simultaneously. The Japanese defenders were overwhelmed. Too many targets, not enough fighters. The Americans pressed their advantage. But the cost kept mounting. Another B-25 went down at 11:15 a.m., then another at 11:23. P-38s tangled with Zeros at 12,000 feet. 2 Lightnings exploded. 1 Zero spun into the harbor. The air battle raged for 90 minutes. Would the sacrifice of 45 men be enough to protect the Marines at Bougainville? Or had 5th Air Force just traded lives for nothing? The answer came within 48 hours. Japanese naval forces at Rabaul remained in port. No sortie toward Bougainville. No attack on the Marine beachhead. Imperial Japanese Navy headquarters in Truk received damage reports from Simpson Harbor. 7 ships sunk or severely damaged. Harbor defenses temporarily disrupted. Fighter strength reduced by combat losses. The combined fleet carrier air groups had lost aircraft too. 18 Zeros destroyed, 12 damaged beyond repair, pilots killed. The elite aviators from Zuikaku, Shokaku, and Zuiho, men with years of training, irreplaceable in 1943. Japan's pilot replacement program couldn't match American production. Every loss mattered. American intelligence intercepted Japanese communications. Decoded messages revealed the impact. Rabaul Command reported the November 2nd raid as the most aggressive air attack they'd experienced. The low-level bombing technique had proven devastatingly effective. Ships at anchor were vulnerable, harbor facilities damaged, morale shaken. More importantly, the Japanese decided Rabaul was no longer secure for major fleet operations. The combined fleet carriers withdrew their air groups by November 10th, sent them back to Truk. The risk of losing more irreplaceable pilots outweighed Rabaul's strategic value. The fortress remained, but its offensive capability was broken. At Bougainville, Marines expanded their perimeter. No Japanese naval interference. No bombardment from heavy cruisers. No destroyer attacks on supply convoys. The beachhead held, then grew. By mid-November, 3 divisions were ashore. Artillery, tanks, supplies. The invasion succeeded. The strategic calculus was clear. 45 American airmen killed, 7 ships destroyed, 1 major Japanese base neutralized, Bougainville secured. The lives traded for objectives achieved. Cold mathematics, the kind that appeared in official histories, numbers without names, statistics without faces. But names mattered to the survivors. Wilkins, the radio operator who died in the ditching, the waist gunner who went down with the aircraft, crews from other B-25s, P-38 pilots who never made it home. Each had family, friends, someone waiting. The war kept moving forward. The dead stayed behind. 5th Air Force began evaluating Wilkins' actions immediately. Multiple witnesses confirmed his attacks. 2 ships destroyed, the cruiser suppressed, his squadron protected during withdrawal. The decision to attack despite catastrophic damage. The final strafing run that drew enemy fire. Medal of Honor criteria were specific. Conspicuous gallantry. Risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. Engagement with enemy forces. Wilkins qualified on every count. His squadron commander submitted the recommendation on November 5th. 3 days after the mission, supporting statements from surviving crew members followed. The paperwork moved through channels. Group level, wing level, 5th Air Force headquarters. General George Kenney reviewed it personally. Kenney commanded all air operations in the Southwest Pacific. He'd seen many Medal of Honor recommendations. Most were rejected. Standards were high. Wilkins' case was different. The evidence was overwhelming. Kenney approved the recommendation on November 20th, forwarded it to Washington. Army Chief of Staff George Marshall received it in December. Marshall signed off. President Roosevelt made the final approval in January 1944. The Medal of Honor was awarded posthumously to Major Raymond Harrell Wilkins. His family received a notification in February, a telegram first, then an official letter. The medal itself came later, presented at a ceremony in California. His parents accepted it. His younger brother attended. The girl in Australia was not invited. She learned about his death through unofficial channels, received a letter he'd written 3 weeks before the mission. It arrived 2 months after he died. The letter talked about plans. After the war, medical school, becoming a doctor, maybe settling in Australia, maybe returning to California. The future spread out in paragraphs of careful handwriting. None of it happened. The Pacific had other plans. The letter became a memorial, filed away with photographs and service records. Back in the Southwest Pacific, the war continued. 5th Air Force mounted more raids on Rabaul. November 5th, November 11th, each one smaller than November 2nd. The Japanese had reinforced defenses, added anti-aircraft guns, improved radar coverage, made the target even harder. But something had changed after Bloody Tuesday. American crews knew it could be done. Rabaul could be hit. Ships could be sunk. The fortress wasn't invincible. Morale improved despite the losses. The November 2nd raid became legendary. The day 5th Air Force proved they could take on the toughest target in theater. Dick Walker kept flying, completed his tour, survived the war. He'd tell his story later. The commander who ran, his solo attack, Wilkins going down fighting. Walker's testimony would become important. Verification of events, proof that November 2nd happened exactly as reported. Other crews rotated home. New replacements arrived. Fresh pilots, young, inexperienced. They learned about Wilkins during training. The last man from the original 3rd Bombardment Group. the major who attacked alone when his aircraft was shot to pieces, the example they were supposed to follow. The 3rd Bombardment Group received a Distinguished Unit Citation for the November 2nd raid. Group-level recognition. Every man who participated was entitled to wear it. Living and dead. The citation documented the mission in official language: target, opposition, results, casualties. It made everything sound clean, professional. The reality had been chaos and violence. Would Wilkins' sacrifice be remembered beyond official citations and forgotten medals? Or would history reduce him to statistics in a forgotten battle? History remembered. Not immediately, not universally, but the story survived. Wilkins' Medal of Honor citation was published in official records. Military historians documented the Rabaul raids in Pacific War chronicles. The November 2nd mission appeared in Air Force historical studies. Small mentions, footnotes, brief paragraphs in longer narratives. But the tactical lessons spread quickly. Skip bombing became standard 5th Air Force doctrine by December 1943. Every B-25 squadron in theater received training. The modifications Wilkins flew became production standard: forward-firing machine guns, reinforced nose sections, enhanced armor around cockpits. The aircraft he died in became the template for hundreds more. The technique evolved. Crews refined the approach angles, tested different altitudes. 50 feet worked better than 100. 40 feet was suicidal. They found the balance: high enough to avoid wave spray obscuring windscreens, low enough to stay under radar coverage. The survivors taught the new arrivals, knowledge purchased with blood. Rabaul remained a target through early 1944, but the character changed. The Japanese pulled their heavy ships out, left destroyers, submarines, small craft. The major fleet units relocated to Truk, then further back as American advances continued. Rabaul became isolated, cut off, eventually bypassed entirely. The fortress that cost 45 lives on November 2nd never fell to direct assault. American strategy shifted. Why attack when you could isolate? The Japanese garrison stayed at Rabaul until war's end. Supplied by submarine, slowly starving, irrelevant. The November 2nd raid had been the beginning of that irrelevance. 3rd Bombardment Group continued operations until 1945. New crews, new aircraft. The original members were all gone by mid-1944, dead, rotated home, reassigned. Wilkins had been the last. His death marked the end of the group's founding generation. Everyone who came after was replacement. The B-25 Mitchell itself became one of the war's most produced bombers, nearly 10,000 built, used by every Allied nation. The aircraft proved adaptable: ground attack, anti-shipping, medium-altitude bombing, reconnaissance. Wilkins died in an early model. Later versions incorporated everything learned from missions like November 2nd. His family kept his memory private. No public speeches, no interviews. The Medal of Honor sat in a display case. His personal effects were boxed and stored. Letters, photographs, the uniform he'd worn before deploying. His parents died in the 1960s. His brother maintained the collection, eventually donated it to the Air Force Museum at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. The display is small. One case among hundreds. Wilkins' Medal of Honor. A photograph in uniform. Brief description of the November 2nd mission. Most visitors walk past. The Second World War section is vast. Too many stories. Too many heroes. Individual sacrifices blend together unless you stop and read. Veterans of the 3rd Bombardment Group held reunions. Annual gatherings. They talked about the men who didn't come back. Wilkins was always mentioned. Toast raised. Moment of silence. The reunions got smaller each year. 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. Eventually, there weren't enough survivors to justify the expense. Dick Walker attended several reunions, told his story about the commander who ran, about Wilkins going down, about the solo attack he made in frustration. Walker died in 1998, heart attack, 76 years old. His obituary mentioned his war service. One paragraph. No details. The co-pilot who survived ditching with Wilkins never spoke publicly about it. He left the Air Force after the war, became a teacher, married, raised children. When students asked about his service, He kept answers brief, just said he flew in the Pacific, nothing about Rabaul, nothing about watching his pilot die. The memory stayed private until his death in 2003. The girl in Australia moved on eventually, married someone else, had a family, but she kept Wilkins' letters, the ones written before November 2nd, descriptions of missions, plans for after the war. The last one arrived in January 1944. She'd already received the telegram about his death, reading it knowing he was gone. She kept the letters until she died. Her children found them going through her effects. One letter stood out, written October 28th, 4 days before the Rabaul mission. Wilkins described feeling like his luck was running out. 86 missions. Everyone else from his original group was dead. He knew the statistics. Nobody beat the odds forever. But he also wrote about duty, about the men depending on him, about finishing the job. The letter ended with a promise. When he made it through his 100th mission, he'd request reassignment. Come back to Australia. Marry her. Start the life they'd planned. He never reached Mission 88. The promise died with him in the Pacific. Modern Air Force officers study the Rabaul raids at professional military education courses, case studies in leadership, tactical innovation, acceptable losses versus mission accomplishment. Wilkins appears in the curriculum, example of commitment, of sacrifice. The analysis is clinical, removed, none of the emotion, just lessons extracted from events. Would future generations understand what Wilkins and 44 others gave over Simpson Harbor? Or would they become just another statistic in a war that claimed millions? The statistics tell one story: 7 ships destroyed or damaged at Rabaul, Japanese naval operations disrupted, Bougainville invasion protected, strategic objectives achieved, 45 American airmen killed, acceptable losses by military standards, mission successful. But numbers miss the human dimension. Raymond Wilkins was 26. He'd survived 86 missions when most crews didn't make it past 20. He was planning a future, medical school, marriage, a life after war. He gave that up in the final seconds over Simpson Harbor when he turned back toward the cruiser. The choice wasn't complex. His squadron was withdrawing. The cruiser was tracking them. Someone needed to draw fire. Wilkins could have kept flying. Nobody would have blamed him. His aircraft was shot to pieces. Mission accomplished. Time to leave. Standard procedure dictated withdrawal. He turned back anyway. Not because orders required it. Not because tactical doctrine demanded it. Because 5 B-25s full of men were in danger, and he could help. The mathematics were simple. 1 aircraft, 1 crew, against 5 aircraft, 5 crews. The exchange made sense only if you valued others more than yourself. That's what the Medal of Honor recognizes. Not just bravery under fire. Thousands showed that. Not just completing the mission. That was expected. The medal honors the moment when someone chooses certain death to save others, when survival instinct surrenders to something larger. Duty, brotherhood, sacrifice. Wilkins made that choice at 800 yards from a Japanese heavy cruiser. He pushed throttles forward on a dying aircraft, flew into concentrated anti-aircraft fire, drew every gun away from his squadron, saved lives he'd never know about, men who went home, raised families, lived decades he never saw. His death purchased their futures. The 5 B-25s he protected all made it back to base that day, damaged, shot up, but flying. 25 men survived who might not have. Some flew more missions. Others rotated home. They carried Wilkins' story with them, told it at debriefings, wrote it in letters, passed it to new crews. One pilot from that squadron named his son Raymond. Another kept a photograph of Wilkins in his logbook for 40 years. A third visited Wilkins' parents in California after the war, told them their son was a hero, explained what happened over Rabaul, gave them details the official telegram couldn't include. The technique Wilkins used became doctrine, skip bombing at masthead level. Thousands of missions flown using tactics he helped prove. Ships sunk across the Pacific, from Rabaul to the Philippines, from New Guinea to Okinawa. The method worked because men like Wilkins tested it under fire, refined it, died perfecting it. His B-25, the one nicknamed Fifi, never flew again. It sits on the Pacific floor 50 miles from Rabaul. The salt water has corroded everything by now. Aluminum dissolved, steel rusted. But the aircraft served its purpose, sunk 2 ships, saved a squadron. That's more than most bombers accomplished. The girl in Australia eventually forgave him for dying. Took years. She understood intellectually, war, duty, sacrifice, but emotionally it was harder. The future they'd planned dissolved on November 2nd. She rebuilt a different life, but she never forgot the pilot who promised to come back. His parents never recovered. Losing a child breaks something that doesn't heal. They attended ceremonies, accepted the Medal of Honor, displayed it proudly, but the medal didn't replace their son. Nothing did. They lived another 20 years carrying that hole. The 87 missions Wilkins flew represent 87 times he could have died, but didn't. 87 times luck held. Skill kept him alive. Fate gave him another day. The 88th mission was different. Maybe luck ran out. Maybe fate decided his number was up. Or maybe he'd simply reached the moment every warrior knows is coming. Combat pilots understood. You can't fly forever. Statistics guarantee it. Enough missions and probability catches up. Wilkins lasted longer than most. He knew that. Wrote about it in letters. Felt it before the final mission. But he kept flying anyway because someone had to. That's the real story of Rabaul. Not the tactics, not the ships destroyed, not the strategic objectives. The story is about ordinary men doing extraordinary things because the mission required it. Because their friends needed them. Because walking away wasn't an option they could live with. Major Raymond Harold Wilkins died doing exactly that. His shot-up B-25 sank 2 ships, then saved his squadron, then took him to the bottom of the Pacific. 26 years old, Medal of Honor recipient, last man from the original 3rd Bombardment Group. Hero. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We are rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about mechanics who turned wrenches into weapons. Stories about pilots who flew burning aircraft to save their crews. Stories about men who stood alone against impossible odds and won. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You are not just a viewer. You are part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Tell us if you have ever heard of Raymond Wilkins before today. Just let us know you are here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for making sure Raymond Wilkins does not disappear into silence. This man deserved to be remembered, and you are helping make that happen.